This is a message from Respectonomics. Its insights belong in every corporate setting where leadership, integrity, and respect matter. Share it across your workplace, your team, your department, your whole organization. It can spark the kind of thinking every corporate culture needs. Make it your compass for business and life. Think Respectonomics.
This is Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley. I'm the fellow who has a hyphen in my name. The hyphen is silent, but I am anything but that. This is a different time for us both, Sarah, and I think we'll have to agree with our audience or tell the audience that we are actually in the afternoon and not the morning. And I don't know about you, but it's frosty here and snow-covered, but very bright and very beautiful.
Very nice. Good afternoon, Jeremy.
Good afternoon, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, everybody. And it's Jeremy Wentworth-Stanley, the voice of Respectonomics, and Sarah Benton, who is my co-host, probably my director, and probably telling me exactly what we're going to talk about. Except I'm going to tell her first what we're going to talk about. And I want Sarah, and some of you won't see this on screen, but I want everybody to agree that the subject we're going to talk about will not allow you to roll your eyes. And the subject is the economy. Well, did you roll your eyes, Sarah? Just a
No,
little?
but I think I felt a few people's eyes rolling.
Okay. Well, let me talk about we're going to be talking about the economy. But in fact, the title to this episode of the Compass Point series, the title is Your Economy. And the reason I call it Your Economy is this. We hear the word economy, you hear it typically from the bankers, you hear it from the financial institutions, the government, and so on. And they always talk about the economy. And I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
Truth
and
is,
why do you think that?
Sarah, because it's my economy and it's your economy. And there should be no reason for any of us to roll our eyes, because the truth of the matter is we are the ones who own the economy.
Okay.
And that's a very important distinction. If you own something, like you own a car, you own a house, you own a dishwasher, and you own things, when you own something, one of the things that goes with that equation of ownership is the idea that it will get serviced. So, for example, if your car needs servicing, you take it to the dealer or wherever you go. And if your dishwasher needs servicing, and the list goes on. But having something serviced is part of the deal of owning something. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't own it if you didn't think you could get service. Does that seem reasonable?
Reasonable.
Yeah. And I think my economy, and more politely, your economy, needs to be able to be serviced. And that service should come from the very people who make a habit of telling me what my economy will be. They've got it the wrong way around. It's time to serve the people. It's time to serve the economy. It's time to service what, in fact, we own, what we have contributed to, what we have paid for, in many cases, what we've sacrificed for, made choices, and so on. It's our economy. And the concept I'm putting in front of everybody is, when you talk about the economy and you talk about political leadership, the correct expression is servant leadership. That leadership needs to be serving our interests. And I think you and I can quickly agree, and I think many people around the world would agree, that their own personal interests have been either set aside or diluted. So when we talk about economy, we're not talking about some fancy textbook. We're talking about your life and my life. So I have thrown down the gauntlet.
Okay.
This is your economy, and that's what we're going to talk about, and it needs to be serviced properly. I want you, now you will roll your eyes. Are you ready?
I'm
really
ready.
must be ready on this one. But before I do that, do you agree with what I've pointed out so far?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, and you're quite right to be able to say, no, Jeremy, I do not agree.
I will, I promise.
Well, the audience would love you. But anyway, the meaning of the word economy is from the Greek. Now you can roll your eyes. But it is a serious, all right, you roll them very nicely. But here is a solemn truth. that the word economy comes from two Greek words, oikos, which means your house, and nemein, which means to manage. And what it means is to manage your household. How much more personal could we be than managing our household? That's about as close to your livingness as you'll ever get.
Right.
Managing your household. So this again brings us back to a point. I made rather a large philosophical issue about the economy belongs to you and it belongs to me. But in actual fact, what we are talking about is household management. Everybody is an economist. Everybody is looking at their paychecks, they're looking at their expenses, they're looking at their costs of the price of depreciation, all looking at all of these things. Each and every one of us is managing a household in one shape or form. Some are bigger than others, some are smaller. That's not the issue. The issue is we manage a household. We are economists. So this economy not only belongs to you and me, but we are in actual fact the economists anyway. We know what we're talking about. We understand pricing. We understand mortgages. We understand loans. We understand revenues and wages and this kind of thing. We understand this very, very well. Ask anybody at a proverbial, time you're sitting at the bar. How often does the conversation get around to wages and standard of living and this kind of thing? We're all economists. So I think the Greeks got it right, oikos and nemos, to manage your household. So with all of that in mind, we then talk about how do we grow? And I'm going to be a little bit controversial here and say how often we talk about a growing economy. And the truth of the matter is, we're not necessarily talking about a growing economy. We're talking about a bloating economy.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, an economy that is bloating means you've got more people doing what you might call less effective work, doing work that is not really contributing to the productivity, to the output of the economy. In other words, I mean, at a very coarse level, it's easy to point at levels of government as being bloated.
Okay.
And the regulatory environment is encouraging bloat. One of the biggest problems with bloat is it becomes self-perpetuating and it becomes a self-justification. We need more people. Translation, I'm at the top of the tree. I have more people under me. I am better protected. I get, almost parasitically, I get to gather all the pieces and all the benefits. Have you noticed in today's world this incredible disparity between those that have and those who have not? The numbers are becoming outrageous. And part of the outrageousness, is that such a word, outrageousness? I don't think so.
We just made it one.
We've got one, outrageousness.ca. But it's outrageous when you look at the level of income and asset growth and so on that's attributable to the top 1 or 2%. And then you see underneath this incredible bloat. So we need to be aware as economists and people who own the economy, we just need to be aware of bloat. And candidly, you see bloat every time you try and get something done. How often do you hear the statement, from a regulatory point of view, you cannot do that?
The proverbial red tape.
The proverbial red tape. So although I'm making a little bit of a sort of grandstanding talk, I think it's important for people to see that bloat infringes on our economic prosperity.
Okay.
I think that's a fair statement. Now, the next thing you notice in government these days, and this is endemic, it's epidemic, it's rundemic, it's everydemic you can ever think of. We have a situation today where the world is awash with government deficits. And the problem with a deficit is the original principle behind a deficit was you would borrow the money to fill the gap when things weren't going well. We have now got into a habit of saying we will run the deficits regardless of the prosperity of the economy. We know that because we've been running deficits now for the last 20 years. Even though when times were pretty good, we went on running up these deficits. And they've also become a sort of clarion call for, well, I want it now.
Right. And what's the impact of that?
Well, the impact is this, and it's a terrifying one. Two things. Number one, if you assume that the deficit is borrowing money, which seems like a reasonable calculation, then you need to say, well, who's doing the borrowing? And who, more importantly, is doing the repayment?
Right.
And I have not even a feeling, I can probably guarantee now that a lot of this debt that satisfies my needs today is going to be paid by my grandchildren. That is immoral.
Right.
Now, if I'm building a long-term asset like a bridge that's going to run us a deficit, yeah, the children are going to benefit, the grandchildren will benefit from that bridge. But an awful lot of what we get in the way of government spending is the jam today. And the jam tomorrow is somebody else's problem, but I want my jam today.
Right.
So the issue we're dealing with is, number one, you ask the impact. It's the issue of pushing it down the line to other people. In other words, I'm abrogating my responsibility. As an
Do you think there's
economist,
a care around that? Do you think we've
no,
lost the care around that?
absolutely. This is why this discussion today is really meant to be one of, could we all please start paying attention? You can't care about something if you don't know it. That's fair enough. But
Right.
I'm putting on the table that this debt is going to transcend to the grandchildren. But here's another one. What if you hear that other line, which is the government borrows the money and has no intention of repaying it? You've heard that line before. And that possibility of not repaying a debt means intellectually, it means axiomatically, what in fact we are doing is printing the money. If you have money coming into your front door that you have no intention of putting back out the back door, then in that case it's just printed.
Right.
And if you're printing money, you are debasing the currency. If we're debasing the currency, we are debasing our own value of self, our own net worth, in fact, our own dignity. It runs contrary to every principle to be debasing a currency as a way of saying we're doing better. It doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I think we should be looking at these deficits far more carefully and stop using them as oh yes, we'll be running a deficit of 50 billion, 70 billion, 100 billion, or whatever the numbers are. The numbers are, by the way, like so many of these things, you have that first taste and it's pretty good. So the second one tastes even better and the list goes on. One of the problems with world's deficits today, I'll give you one number. You know how you love economic numbers? Come on, smile. The world will smile with you. Good, nice one. But the truth is that in 73 days, the United States increased their deficit by $1 trillion.
Wow.
The last time they increased the deficit by $1 trillion, it took 9 months. So in other words, we're now accelerating the pathway to deficits. And I think we're demonstrating that we don't have a real willingness to repay it. And you know something? If everybody gangs together and says, I'm not going to repay the debt, you're left with two things. Either you're left with the debased of the currency. We just talked about that, how it gets effectively printed. But the other part is this. If debt is not repaid, then who is going to be able to borrow money 10 years down the road? Because all the stuff that you could have borrowed has already been gone to the market. It's gone. So in other words, we'd be denying future generations their ability to borrow. So whichever way you slice this, it doesn't come out very well.
Right.
Then I want to move on to forecasts. Here's a really, really sticky one. Governments, as you know, are legendary at making forecasts. And I think you will agree with me that their forecasts, as the expression is, are not worth the paper they're written on. We're going to have the deficit under control in 2 years. We're going to do this, we're going to do that. And more of a clarion example at the moment is, this is an international audience that we're talking to, but we can tell them that in Canada, the budget is directed towards expanding the production of natural gas and oil and transportation and so on. At face value, in fact, it was pointed out that we would like to be an energy superpower. So far, so good. Except for one thing. In The Economist, this is November 2025, in The Economist this week, there's a leading article on how China is making a grab to become the world's energy power through the development of cheap green electricity. They are building with green mechanisms, they are building the equivalent of 300 nuclear power plants a year. This is big stuff. So if you're building in another part of the world, you're developing this cheap electricity, it begs the question, then who's going to buy our gas?
Right.
Why would you bother? You have an electric car that you can run cheaply. You get batteries that work for, thousands of kilometers, whatever that technology is. So what I'm getting at is when you're running deficits based on forecasts that are very difficult to verify for accuracy or reliability or consistency, when you find that you really can't, what's the word, validate your forecast, that deficit becomes even more dangerous. You might say, do I rest my case? No, I don't. Because I've got one more thing I want to point out. I want you to imagine you're driving your car along the road and either you feel it or you get a little indicator on your dashboard that shows that one of the tires has gone flat or has lost air.
Right.
You need to take that car to a gas station or equivalent to have it looked at, yes?
Yes.
But there's one thing that will not work. Will not. You cannot take the air out of the other 3 tires to fill the 4th tire. You cannot do that. And that is, in a sense, when people say, we want equality, they're saying, my tire is down, so I'm going to take the air out of somebody else's tire. That is not effective. All you end up with then is a car with 4 flat tires. That is lousy economics. It's lousy physics.
And when you're referring to taking, just for our listeners, when you're referring to taking, you can't take air from the other 3 tires for that other tire. What specifically are you speaking of when you relate that to the economics?
Thank you so much. You just built me into my next point. You're very good at that.
Thank you.
I thought you were going to contradict me. But no, the point of the matter is that new air that you need in that tire that's flat needs one of 2 things. Either the tire has to be fixed, or you have to get fresh air into the tire. In either case, they are both external activities. They are the ones that the economy delivers the growth. It is the manufacturing of the air. It is the servicing aspect of the mechanic who can take the wheel off. This is how the economy gets serviced. That is where it grows. It doesn't grow by changing my weakness for your strength. It grows because we all grow together. We need that tire to be refilled with new energy, with new ideas, new products, new services.
So not offsetting by depleting another.
Exactly. It's a pretty straightforward. People say I don't like to talk about economics. Well, next time you're driving your car, just think about which wheel needs more wheel than the other, because we all need the wheels to work together for both balance, for steering, for power. And, even if you take this analogy to its nth degree, you end up with a thing that each tire is useful. One is doing steering, one is doing braking, one carries the power, one carries the cornering. Each one is useful. And that's true of the economy. Each of us has an important and vital role. So there's one other thing, though, and I think I will let you go on this one. And that is this, that if you say the tire needs fixing, one of the things that I think I know under the law of physics is, in order for that tire to be fixed, the car has to stop. It seems pretty straightforward to me. I've never seen a mechanic going round and round in circles trying to fix a moving tire. I've never seen it.
It might be a little bit challenging.
They're a great cartoon. But what we need to understand is, in that instance, the car needs to stop. So does the economy. We have this complete sort of obsession with moving forward, moving upwards, moving bigger, moving better. And some of that is wonderful. But every now and again, when a repair job needs to be done, we need to stop. And stopping means that we can then draw breath, we can go and have a cup of coffee, and while we're having a cup of coffee, the tire is being fixed. The economy is the same. But I also I really want to conclude on. If you are driving your car and you see a truck ahead of you that's carrying glass bottles, and that truck is in some kind of accident, and the glass is all over the road, what in fact do? You stop.
Right.
Because you realize that if you drive on that glass, you will destroy all your tires. Fair?
Fair.
Here's the point of that analogy, an allegory. That is, we have this sort of, again, another obsession is we want to avoid a recession. In that example, the worst thing we could do would be to drive on the splintered glass.
Mm.
The better thing to do is to stop and find another route. And in
Right.
doing that, yes, it can take time. We have to pull back, if you will, from that danger zone. But that is what recession means. Recession means pulling back from. I won't give you the Latin, but it is in fact a receding. It's an act of receding. And an act of receding can be a very prudent, a very powerful mechanism to avoid, frankly, a far greater risk.
Mm.
So all I'm doing here in this discussion of the economy is asking people to understand the ownership that they have individually, the demands that they have on the leaders, the idea that we need to have responsible leadership, responsible servanthood. We need to have people who can recognize the need. Sometimes we have to slow down, sometimes we even have to stop, and sometimes we even have to go backwards. But if we don't accommodate those vital vectors, the risk is we're going to go over the edge. And you know something? When I own the economy and the economy is functioning properly, one of the great beneficiaries is my sense of self-worth, my sense of dignity, and my sense that I really am being included in this magnificent project. If the economy is going to be working well, we need our dignity, we need our accountability, and we need transparency. It sounds very philosophical. Actually, pragmatically, it's dead on the money.
Sounds like basic necessities to me.
I think so.
And?
I rest. No, Sarah, we rest our case.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Sarah.